Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this FIDIC, webinar series where we're discussing developing global best practice skills in the industry. My name is Dr. Nelson Ogunshake. I'm the CEO of the FIDIC, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this particular webinar. It should be an exciting period today because I understand over 1,000 people registered to participate. I guess everybody wants to know the best, practice. Today, we're going to cover quite a lot, but I'm going to leave the introduction to our eminent president, who's going to do that later on. But before I do so, a few points. It is no rocket science to understand that we have the G20 meeting today in Indonesia. Thinking about, is it G19 or G20? Or should FIDIC be added onto the table, become G21? I also understand that the COP27 is ongoing, where the leaders in the world are meeting, and it's no surprise that we are talking about FIDIC global goals. So for the climate change charter that we put on last year, if you have not signed up, I will encourage you to please go on our website and sign up to the commitment. It's very important that we get various stakeholders in the industry, both in terms of, member association, individual firm, and projects to commit to this climate change charter. It is good for the industry, and I will challenge you to be involved. It is my pleasure now to introduce our chair, our president, Tony Barry from Australia, and I think it's evening now in Australia. Tony is going to take us through the quick intro and the handover to the moderator. So Tony, it's back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelson, and welcome everybody. Very pleased that you're on the call tonight and on the webinar. I hope you enjoy the event. This is the latest in our popular FIDIC 2022 webinar series for global and infrastructure professionals. And as Nelson said, I'm the president of FIDIC, and I have the joy of introducing many of these throughout the year. I'm very pleased to see so many of you joining us, and hopefully you'll find it a very interesting and important topic today. The title of the event is Developing Global Best Practice Skills in the Industry, and I'm grateful for all the hard work put in by the FIDIC Membership Committee and the Directors and Secretaries Advisory Council who've organised this event for us today. Both of these important bodies have key liaison roles with FIDIC member associations around the world. These member associations play a crucial role in representing the interests of the consulting engineering industry at a global level. This webinar will look at how FIDIC members, and indeed their members also, can benefit from best practice training services and the difference those can make to the industry, both at a national and international level. Participants in this webinar today will also hear about some of FIDIC's academic services available for the industry to achieve its advocacy objectives. The moderator for today's session is Chris Campbell, who's the chair of the FIDIC Directors and Secretaries Advisory Council and also the CEO of Consulting Engineers South Africa. Chris is a brilliant advocate for FIDIC and its member associations, and he has some excellent speakers to help him with today's webinar. We have Eni Sutanto from Indonesia, chair of the FIDIC Membership Committee and a senior advisor at Mott MacDonald. Eni will talk about the need for consulting engineering firms to better understand how projects can be sustainable. Also joining us is João Rochina, Vice President of ABCE, FIDIC's member association in Brazil. João will provide a brief overview of ABCE activities in terms of training and capacity building in Brazil, and also highlight the importance of having FIDIC support to provide training and publications on best practice in the languages spoken in Latin America. Latoya Una, a member of the FIDIC Future Leaders Advisory Council from Kenya, will offer a perspective from the young professionals in our industry, many of whose views on key issues were included in the recent published FIDIC Future Leaders document, which was launched at our Global Infrastructure Conference in Geneva in September. Last but not least, Michael Broadley, the General Manager of the FIDIC Academy, will talk about the Academy and its work and present some of the emerging findings from a survey that was recently conducted to better understand the needs of FIDIC's members regarding training on best business practices. I trust that you will all enjoy today's webinar and find out a lot more about the services FIDIC offers to you along the way. With that in mind, let me hand over to the moderator for today's webinar, Chris Campbell, who's, as I mentioned, the chair of the Directors and Secretaries Advisory Council. Thank you, Chris. It's over to you to guide us through today's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to this, what is likely to be a very informative event. And as you would have heard from Tony, a host of speakers on different experiences and different aspects related to our topic today, which is developing global best practice skills in the industry. And of course, there is no doubt whatsoever that we might have gone through some tertiary education process, but it doesn't end there. There's an ongoing journey in self-education, and where there are opportunities such as these and those offered through FIDIC or any of your larger local member associations, you are encouraged to pursue those, because indeed it talks directly to the industry. It does not have the complexities of a generic training sessions that you may encounter elsewhere, because most often they're offered by experts in the industry for the industry. So without further ado, I'm but the moderator. Some house rules. If you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we will take them as they come. We would also, encourage all kinds of questions or comments, and we'll see how we may respond to them. Should we, of course, run out of time, I have no doubt that this is a recorded webinar, and that the questions and answers to those may well be posted on the FIDIC platforms. So without further ado, please get your pens out for those of us who are avid note takers. And allow me then to invite our first speaker, Eni Suetanto, who is the chair of the FIDIC Membership Committee, also happens to be a senior advisor at Mott MacDonald. And I at the risk of repeating what Tony said, what we will do is have a brief presentation by each, very brief, and then an open panel discussion. And of course, we rely on you, the audience, to post your questions so that indeed our group of eminent speakers may be able to fill in the gap where you may have these kinds of questions. So our first speaker, our first up is going to be Eni, and she will be followed by João. And then we will have João is from Brazil, Eni is Indonesia, João Brazil, Latoya in Kenya, and Michael in Switzerland. So without further ado, Eni, please, you may commence with what you have to share with our audience today.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, the FIDIC board members, the CEO, the FIDIC secretariat, moderators, speakers, FIDIC committees, and our valued participants around the world. Thank you to moderator and all participants who joined this webinar. In this occasion, we can discuss together how FIDIC members can get benefit from best practice training services, which can improve capability development of the member association and member firms or individual, both on a national and international level. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share the experience and how important to improve professional development and what demand-side aspiration as the member firms who face challenges in the consulting industry. Most of member firms had problems during the pandemic era, who tried to adapt their working system in more collaboration, more innovation, etc. And now, I think they are come back to normal and got their firms back. However, they still have some issues and challenges to be solved. FIDIC accommodates this condition with a significant step by introducing FIDIC Academy, that the training is not only about the FIDIC contracts, but also best practice services in field of consulting engineering. So having discussion with some firms, there are three key important demands. That's about the training, database, and project information. Regarding the training, so currently the firms still have problems regarding the human resources running the project, as they prefer to work from home in their countries. To anticipate this situation, the firms need to develop the capabilities of their staff to carry out the project requirements, as well as digital capability, such as building information modeling or BIM, where we can do remote design using BIM, but unfortunately, not all firms can develop this system because it requires big investment. An understanding of sustainable development, public-private partnership, PPP, and FIDIC condition of contract is also very important. So, from FIDIC website, we found 38 certified trainers of fundamental FIDIC condition of contract and 32 certified trainers of Silverbook FIDIC condition of contract. So the FIDIC Academy can utilize the certified trainers directly to support member firms in their countries to accelerate the development of FIDIC contract understanding skills, which the training can be executed in their country's languages, and also the reason of price consideration. Translation of FIDIC condition of contract is also essential to gain in-depth understanding of the FIDIC condition of contract in order to avoid any misuse FIDIC contract types. As we know that FIDIC condition of contract is acknowledged by the parties as well as the lenders, such as international financial institution, which is a balanced and fair agreement between the users, employer, and the service providers, the consultant and the contractor. So all FIDIC board members and committees who dedicated to FIDIC can support member association in their countries to bridge and influence the governments in using the FIDIC's condition of contract, which is a blood of FIDIC as organization. So for example, in Indonesia, we are lucky that one of FIDIC board members is coming from Indonesia, who is consistent and continues to promote the government of Indonesia for giving chance to member association on issuing a certification of business entity for engineering consulting, and also for using the FIDIC condition of contract, and with the result that most of international contract agreements are using FIDIC condition of contract. And good news that recently the government of Indonesia used the FIDIC contract as a main reference for construction project using the National Budget Fund. So tomorrow, he will also share his knowledge and experience with MEMAs and the Asia-Pacific region about the dispute board by holding free webinar facilitated by FIDIC Asia-Pacific. By itself, the member firms will benefit from these actions, which have an impact on increasing member association, member firms that support FIDIC activities, and become more proactive in providing information or opinions in the framework of FIDIC improvements programs in the future. This will influence for more new member association or associate member affiliate members, and individuals to join FIDIC. So related to the sustainable development, that sustainable design and construction and sustainable development policies are key factors for sustainable benefit and construction industry that contribute to environment, economic, and social. As a construction industrial player, understanding of sustainable construction is now very, very important, meaning that the material construction should be environmentally friendly and use recycled material of construction as much as possible, energy saving, water cycle, and others. For example, Mott MacDonald involved in Jakarta International Velodrome Stadium for Asian Games 2018, which was built by using recycled construction material from water polo and shooting range London Olympic 2012 by re-engineering the prefabricated steel frame structure and membrane PVC roofing. So international finance institutions already started to put sustainable development requirements as one of the project compliance in tender document. Thanks to Nelson and Sustainability Development Committees and other teams who involved in the sustainable development, that FIDIC has released 2 reports, the FIDIC Climate Charter and the State of the World. However, FIDIC may bridge, communicate with lenders and also governments to understand the limits of sustainable development requirements that must be fulfilled in construction industry, and how FIDIC disseminates this knowledge to the firms, member association, or to the people. Besides the training, member firms also are looking for other supports from FIDIC about the developing database and project information. So FIDIC may consider developing database of consulting engineering firms, both national and international, who are members of member association, which the data will be collected by member association. The purpose of this is to connect among members, which can improve communication and collaboration among them. For example, that one of conditions in goods and services procurement for IFIs is that the international firms must collaborate and partnering with local firms in their countries with the aim of knowledge transfer and better project implementation result. Because local firms are familiar with situation and regulation in their respective countries, and to anticipate problems for staff transfer, and to keep the project running smoothly and on schedule. The growing database will show tangible benefit for member firms as well as member association as FIDIC members. Regarding the project information, the existence of member association comes from member firms, and member firms will survive if they can get better advanced information for any potential project opportunities in the future. FIDIC has an MOU with IFIs, which can be developed to list project information about the future IF project. This information will be interesting benefit for MAs and member firms, and also individuals to join FIDIC, and also have an impact to improve better communication among them. So those all demands from member firms to be discussed further, and how FIDIC responds to this request. As Proverb says, don't give fish, but give the fishing rod instead. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in this webinar.
Thank you, Annie, for those insightful comments and a good start to our conversation that will follow. And I do believe that there is an array of areas of interest, which we certainly will pick up on. And without further ado, then, I think it would be most appropriate, and please bear in mind that once all of our speakers have just sort of planted a few seeds, we will have a full panel discussion and pick up on all the areas that have been covered. So without further ado, allow me then to invite onto the platform our speaker from Brazil, from the Brazilian Association of Consulting Engineers, the Vice President indeed, João Requena. Please, if you would join us, João. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And I first thank you, FIDIC. Thanks, FIDIC, for the invitation to take part in this seminar. Maybe I represent today the sort of association, of affiliate association, I should say, that should, let's say, bring forth more the links with FIDIC. In the last few days, we have been talking about this seminar, and I got to know so many things that FIDIC is doing, sort of support that FIDIC is giving to the affiliate associations, that I have the feeling that from our side, from Brazil, we should take more advantage of this sort of support. And I beg your pardon if some of my thoughts I will give you are not, let's say, completely aligned with the policies of FIDIC. It will be my fault. And I would like to say that to some extent, the affiliate associations, the national associations, do something about training, about preparing their engineers, the national engineers, to cope with the challenges of our profession. And I have the feeling that maybe Annie has told us a lot about some of the subjects I would like to talk about. I have the feeling that we maybe are in need of selecting a few subjects so that we could, let's say, focus on these subjects, on these issues, and be able to develop a more proper training schemes or training programs in our own countries. I give you a few ideas about that. One thing that Annie has told us about is the importance of the sustainability issue. I know FIDIC is following COP27, and we'll be having meetings of the Global Leaders Forum in the next few days about COP27. But in the end of the day, what should we do about sustainability? Maybe we have first to develop a few best practices so that we can train people, we can advocate for those best practices. I give you an example, Annie has already said a few words about that, is that maybe we are in a situation in which we should advocate for, let's say, the use of carbon emission estimates together with cost estimates in our construction design and operation. And this is not something easy to, let's say, convince people of a sort of methodology in which we could deal together with cost and carbon emission. And that is a challenge. And I think we should think about that. I think is the type of subject that ourselves as engineers, as consulting engineers, can give a good hand to those people that are involved with this issue all over the world. Sustainability in the first place. We have other subjects, maybe more regional. Maybe some of you have heard of large problems of compliance, integrity, or corruption itself in Latin American countries, involving Brazil as an example. And we are, let's say, challenged to do something about that. And for an example, in one of the seminars of the webinars I was able to attend, promoted by FIDIC, the panelists were talking about active action. Active action, let us say, is something that ourselves, our sector, has to do about integrity, compliance, and so on. So how to do that? And starting from, let's say, developing a strategy, a global strategy for that issue, then think about training our engineers, training our leaders to be able to cope with the situation, how to get engineers in supervision accountable for the measurements of the jobs and so on. So first, getting a best practice or getting a strategy in place. And so thinking about how to train people on that matter, on that subject. Another issue is the FIDIC contracts. Annie also has told us a lot about that. And to give you an example, in Brazil, as far as we know, we are handling now with the first FIDIC contract job in Brazil. And this is a yellow book job, design and build. And my company was hired as the engineer. And we had to train people. People from my company have registered in courses of FIDIC to be able to know more about the yellow book. The client itself is struggling to, let's say, get to know the yellow book and so on. And this is due to an agreement between FIDIC and the World Bank. And now in jobs that are financed by the World Bank in Brazil, the FIDIC contracts will be introduced. As far as we know, we are dealing with the first case in Brazil. And one problem, for instance, is that we don't know, as far as I know, we don't have in Brazil, let's say, approved version of the books, of the contract books. So we were offered a Portuguese version, but we don't know exactly what is the source of that version. And it's again a question of having put in place a strategy for, in this case, for the FIDIC contract books. How should we deal with them in terms of Portuguese, in the case of Brazil, Spanish for all other, or many of the other countries in Latin America, and finally, seeing how can we be involved in training programs for not only our engineers, but also, as I have said, the clients itself. Well, I am giving you 3 examples of issues that are very important, not only from the strategic point of view, but for the training point of view. And I would like to add 2 other subjects. One, Annie again has told us a lot about, that is the opportunity we have now to work in home office, work geographically spread, virtually connected design teams. How can we manage to do that? What is the approach of our sector as a whole, as FIDIC as a whole? Are we, let's say, encouraging our companies to work at a distance or not? We are seeing even the largest information technology companies like Google and so on, struggling to see what to do. Some of these companies are inviting people to come back to office as soon as possible. Others are, let's say, leaving people to decide what to do. What should we do about that? This is one sort of subject. Another one, a more technical one. We are seeing, let's say, now a fusion between PMI style monitoring, planning, monitoring, and controlling, and at the same time, the agile methodologies getting in. How can we think about developing some best practices in taking together these 2 sort of thinking and being able to develop a methodology for project management, for construction management, and so on. So I would like to say that, as I have started with, maybe we are the sort of member association that should get more in touch with FIDIC. We are ready to do that. And again, we thank you very much for the invitation to take part in this webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that perspective. Certainly covered some interesting ground. Indeed, we will be focusing on some of those issues and the intersection on the issues raised by both yourselves and Eni up to this point. So, I do see questions coming through. Please don't be hesitant. Post your question. While you do that, I'm going to invite our third panelist, who is Latoya Ona, who is also Latoya is from Kenya, and she is a member of the FIDIC Future Leaders Advisory Council. So, Latoya, please, if you would like to join us and join the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your introduction. Thank you, FIDIC, and the participants for joining us in this webinar today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's good afternoon from Kenya. It's a sunny day today. So I hope my presentation brings sunshine to the global best practices. So I represent the FIDIC Future Leaders Advisory Council. I am a member of the council, and I feel like the future leaders have demonstrated that they champion best practices in the engineering projects. Recently, there was a published Future Leaders booklet for the Global Infrastructure Conference in Geneva, which our president has just mentioned. It is a testimony that future leaders are the forefront of FIDIC best practices, demonstrated by the 14 submissions from the Future Leaders membership, global membership. The topics revolved around sustainable consulting, procurement, contract management, technology and innovation, and their role in upholding sustainable engineering and projects and practices. Maybe if you can, after the webinar, you can have a look at it. It's under the Geneva 2022 Global Infrastructure Conference. The Future Leaders publication is there. Additionally, the Future Leaders Management course is a course, a FIDIC program that strengthens the business expertise of young engineers and other professionals in the consulting field. The program runs for 5 months and concludes at the global conference. In Geneva, we had great presentations and we learned a lot in the 2 weeks that they were there, and those who were present could see that a lot of work and a lot of energy was put into those presentations, and we are fired up and ready to bring in our best knowledge and our best innovation to projects worldwide. I'll bring it closer to home, to Kenya, where Kenya universities produce around 3,000 graduates annually. Unfortunately, a small percentage of this workforce is absorbed in engineering projects and engineering space, an even smaller percentage transition to professional engineers. Out of that, an even smaller percentage are female engineers. In a recent report on engineering membership in Kenya from the Institute of Engineers of Kenya, only 10% of the registered engineers in any class were women. That is from student graduates all the way to consulting graduates, to consulting engineers. Sadly, there was no female consulting engineer registered. As a country, many projects are procured and implemented through the FIDIC contracts because our projects are funded by international, by European Council, the World Bank, the Japanese JICA, and many of them use FIDIC contracts in their general conditions. And FIDIC encourages diversity and inclusion in its best practices. I believe that in our projects locally, we should therefore take advantage of diverse talent. Diversity here means youth, women, persons living with disability, who are often overlooked as inexperienced to achieve sustainable projects. Something that is, we could say, a thorn in our flesh in our projects, just like Latin America, is integrity and corruption. Integrity is a major issue that limits the success of our projects locally. The government and public generally mistrust engineers from the procurement to the implementation of the projects. The effect of this is dire and has been witnessed through collapsing infrastructure, mainly buildings and bridges, poor standards of roads, and public revelation of poor infrastructure procurement practices. Although we have a code of conduct that that governs engineers, best practices applies that engineers practicing in questionable activities should be reined in by regulatory bodies and maybe local member associations. And this also provides an opportunity for sensitization by FIDIC through its training programs. Integrity is normally at the helm of FIDIC, with the numerous publications such as the best practices from the golden principles, the FIDIC guide or great practice, the business of professional services, farms of 2015. And I would encourage our engineers, clients, funding partners to look into this to improve the reputation and confidence and image of engineers, mainly in Kenya. This also applies to young engineers who are emulating the older engineers and hope to progress in their careers. That's briefly what I have to say about best practices in Kenya and through the future leaders' eyes. And I hope to get more of this going and more of this discussion going, so that we can at least elevate the status of engineering in Kenya and in young engineers. Thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Latoya, for that contribution. Certainly a very interesting perspective from a future leaders member, and fits absolutely into the context of the discussions and the issues that have been raised so far. And I think so that we can indeed get to our open discussion session, I'm going to invite our final speaker of the panel, Michael Broadley, who is the General Manager of the FIDIC Academy, to please join me and share with you what exactly is on offer through the FIDIC Academy that may answer some of the questions, some of the issues that have been raised so far. Without further ado, Michael, please do join me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. Thanks for joining us on this FIDIC webinar as part of the 2022 series. I hope you're all in good health. Quick thank yous to FIDIC membership committee and directors and Secretaries Advisory Council for inviting me along with FIDIC events team and FIDIC membership team as well, and of course Tony and Nelson as representatives from the FIDIC board. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to walk you through some points around the Academy, to give you sort of top line overview, what we are and what we're doing and kind of where we're going. So looking at obviously vision, mission, core values, our learning approach, the governance population, upcoming courses. This is a great chance for me to plug what we're doing currently and into the future. Then some top line headlines on a stakeholder survey we recently sent out to all our various clients, that ran for around a month. And then I'll look at MOOCs, mass online open courses, and where we possibly fit into that picture moving forward. FIDIC Academy accreditation and a new website that's on the way. I'll just step back in time a little bit though, just for those on the call that are maybe not hugely familiar with FIDIC training per se, but basically FIDIC's been offering training pretty much exclusively around contracts since 2003. Of course, we have the Future Leaders course as well. Been providing training to consulting engineers, civil engineering sectors, with over 100 courses a year. Working with key stakeholders of consultancy firms, crucially member associations. Know a lot of you guys on the call today around the globe. And we're at a point now where we are trying to evolve to develop best practice courses. So we have, when you're dealing with contracts, you have, let's say, a more holistic approach to the industry when you're dealing with those contracts. So looking at, we talked about the sustainability issue, HR management, risk, finance. But I want to make it clear from the outset that these best practice business courses are a complement to FIDIC contracts training and not a replacement in any way. So it's really to have a holistic picture so you can get the education and the training and the continued professional development that you need. So in terms of a vision, what are we trying to do as an academy? It's really to be a world leading center eventually in contract and best business practice learning and development within the industry. So that's where we want to go. How we're going to get there. We believe that we need to be offering bespoke education and training to meet your needs in this industry. Of course, we are not completely separate from the main body of FIDIC. We obviously adhere to the core values of FIDIC as well. So in terms of quality, as one of the core values of FIDIC, we want to offer high quality education to enhance your skills, innovation, and best business practice in the industry. Of course, integrity as well. We need to have transparency and integrity in our day-to-day operations and our offerings, with our clients, both internally as well. And just on the sustainability note as well, it should be and is at the heart of what FIDIC does, and that needs to be reflected in our course design and delivery. And I don't just mean in terms of greening, in terms of all the green issues, climate change. That's very important, especially in this sector. But how do we achieve sustainable finance? How do we achieve sustainable human resource capital? So we're reducing turnover costs. How do we achieve sustainable diversity and inclusion in the industry? It's just my predecessor just talked about. So those three key values will be running through everything that we do in the academy. They already do, but we're continuing to build on that. In terms of a learning approach, I've got a bit of a saying, it's like every day is a school day. And I think education and training, it really, it shapes futures, it can change lives. And I think providing CPD, continued professional development to the industry is really a commitment from our side for you to have long life learning. So we have the suite of contracts, we have the Future Leaders Management course, and now we're moving into the territory of best business practice courses. And basically it's to present something either new to you, or it might be to refresh existing knowledge that you might have, improve your skills, as well as what we want to do is be able to, so you keep up to date with the latest developments in the sector globally and see the impact that you're having in a positive way. And of course, all this professional development, I think, is a good step into helping retain people in the industry as well. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the learning approach, very top line, that we're looking at with the academy. Of course, I'll just say a few words on governance. None of this is really manageable if it's not underpinned by a sound governance structure. So just to give you a quick update, we've just finished populating. We have 2 levels, the Senate and faculties. And ultimately these bodies they're like a sounding board, strategic sounding board for the education development within the academy. We'll announce these profiles early December. And the reason I'm mentioning these is because these are leaders in best business practice within our field. So they're the best people to have to help us develop the courses as we move forward, whether it's in risk management, integrity, quality management. So they're in the best position to help FIDIC carry out its vision and mission that I mentioned at the start. And they have an in with these large companies that they work with as well. So it's good exposure for the academy through them to see what training needs are within their companies moving forward. Here's where I'm going to do a little bit of advertising for FIDIC Academy in terms of what's running right now. So as you probably know, we've got the Contractors Users Conference coming up in London at the end of the month, and the bookending both of the conference days, we are running 2 workshops. So the first one is an exclusive workshop on the 2022 reprints of FIDIC Suite of Contracts 217, and that's 2017. That's the 2nd edition. These are in person, of course. So if you signed up for the conference, please sign up for these workshops if you feel they are applicable to you. And on the 1st of December, we've got a FIDIC Claims workshop, which is also in person at the conference. 7th of December, we've got a specialized workshop on FIDIC contracts, which will be online, and you can go to the website and sign up for that. Now, these next 2 courses, I want to shine a light on these because these are our first 2 best business practice courses that we're doing online via our platform. So 14th December, we are running a workshop for the Intro to Design Risk Management for Engineers. And then after that, we have a short course on cybersecurity, which is on demand. So it's self-paced. You can log in when you want to watch it, and that's actually a free one. So if you go onto our website as of next week, we will have that up and running for registration. So that gives me just an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what's going on right now, and I'll get into the future when I go through the stakeholder survey right now. So I mentioned at the top, one of the remits for me when I came in as the academy manager was to conduct an online survey with stakeholders and some focus groups with key stakeholders as well. And we basically wanted to find out very crudely 4 things. So what type of topics do people want? How do you want it delivered? How much money are people willing to spend? And how much time do you want to contribute to your continued professional development in general? So I'll just give you very top line results. In terms of who answered the survey, 75% was mixed between people from private firms and member associations. 70% came from civil engineering, so that tells us that our mailing list is to the right people and we're hitting mainly the right target audience. And nearly 70% had 10 years or more experience in the engineering sector, which tells us a little bit about some decent retention there, which is what we want through developing training and education. In terms of the topics, it cemented our thought, but it's good news that people, number 1, clearly, was people still want training on contracts, which is great. So again, I'll reiterate my message. The best business practice is not a replacement or to cannibalize any of the contract training that we're doing. It's simply a complement to it. So we're going to continue to develop the contract courses that we've got. And these will help also prepare for FCL as well. So FIDIC credentialing. So if people want to use us as a springboard to go on and do one of the 5 certifications, we're making sure that there's a match up there with our learning outcomes. In terms of other subject priorities, so obviously we focus on integrity, quality, and sustainability, but other highlights I would say are risk management, project management, and procurement. So look out for those in sort of Q1, Q2 next year, and these will be online public courses that we'll be starting to build. So in terms of methods of delivery, the main method that people are looking for it's actually a hybrid of on demand, so pre-recorded, with live ILT, so instructor-led training. And these are public courses, so I don't want to get confused with private. They'll still go on if you have something in a bank with 20 people or something with a member association in a specific homogeneous region. That's one side, but I'm talking about public courses here in general. In terms of financial budget, around 50% of our respondees are willing to spend 700 or less on 12 hours worth of contact hours, like a 12-hour course, and 25% 700 to 1,000 euros for a 12-hour course. So in terms of time budget, people want like micro-size, bite-size courses and not big, long university month-long style training. So we're looking at doing this with 12 or less hours in the way we develop and design the courses moving forward. And in terms of time commitment outside the class, people would like to do 1 hour per contact hour that they have. So if you have a course of 12 hours, then it'd be 24 altogether, with 12 offline and 12 in the classroom or the virtual classroom. Something else that's very important in terms of learning paths is making sure that we have leveling, so foundation, intermediate, and advanced. So people can go on a journey, if you like. And also, I think it will cut out frustration for people if we're trying to hit in the middle all the time, and then you have juniors in a call and seniors, and you're trying to meet in the middle. You're going to have frustration at either end of the scale there. We're also looking to build on a teaching identity, which this comes from mainly from the focus groups that we had, that focuses really on engagement and interaction with participant to participant, but also trainer to participant as well, using the online tools available for virtual courses, and again relates to the learning approach that I discussed slightly earlier. Okay, I'll just take a breath. Something else we've looked into, that covered very top line over the survey. I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. So I'm going to talk a little about MOOCs. So MOOCs are mass open online courses. Some of you have maybe done a course with FutureLearn, Coursera, Udemy. There are 7 main providers across the internet right now. The market's huge. It's worth 9 billion. It's going to be worth 30 billion by 2030. So it's a space that we really need to be in. These 7 providers, they provide over 20,000 online courses, and there's 230,000 users to date as well. But what does that mean for us in our industry? When we drilled into it a little deeper, there's a gap for us. There's a gap for FIDIC that we could fill. Out of these 20,000 courses, less than 50 that cater for our industry with best business practice, bespoke business practice for our industry. So we think that we can really build the FIDIC Academy brand and reputation through acting like a MOOC, through these best business practice sort of small pocket packaged courses, making them affordable for you as well. The business model between the contract courses and the best business practice courses is slightly different, and I'm happy to answer a question on that if needs be. And then finally, I'm aware of time. I'm going to get cut off the knees. So we are building a new website as well. So this will be like our shop window, if you like. It will be separate from the main FIDIC website. So yeah, a standalone e-commerce, open for public courses where you can buy and register for courses. If you are in the need of private courses as well, of course, this is where you will go to register your interest as well. In terms of when that will be ready, we're looking to launch in early next year. We should be in the beta testing phase in December for the Academy. Excuse me. Last but not least, but very important, we are applying for accreditation for our training and education through the Academy starting next January. We're currently in the application phase with a third-party provider. Why are we doing this? Why get accredited? Well, I think it's a great opportunity for quality recognition, independent quality recognition, for continued professional development, for you to document, to keep a record of your increasing skills and knowledge and experience that you gain throughout your career. Many companies are asking for this, asking their employees to go through this process, so they have a skilled workforce. And for us, like I said, it's quality recognition, a third-party quality recognition of what we're putting out there, and internally a quality check annually to make sure that the academy is in a nutshell fit for purpose for the market needs. That's all from me. Thank you very much again, and I wish everyone good health and looking forward to the discussion. Cheers. Back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think that is such a huge offering that certainly we see the Academy working on. And it gives us a good opportunity to, I guess, start having a conversation, more of a dialogue than a monologue. And I think the one of the questions which I have seen almost allowed a segue from your survey into the stream of questions, and I am aware that Michael was the last presenter, and I am actually going to direct this to Michael because I do believe it would be top of mind and certainly very pertinent. So Michael, I think I've picked up a train of questions which talks to the cost of the training, and generally, if discussions are in euro and dollar, then in most other parts of the world, you have different currencies and you have exchange rates. How do you think that, what work is being done to try to make these more affordable? And in my own thinking, I'm not sure, I think many are familiar with the hamburger franchise, McDonald's. There was a McDonald's index, which people had often referred to, which tried to look at an equivalent cost as opposed to just a same cost and then just convert it, because that appears to be a major inhibitor to attendance. And one of the other points raised was, if the courses happen to be in person and attendees have to then travel to a particular venue, all of that just escalates. And the result, of course, is in the bigger picture, it's not only the training, but you may find that the uptake of the use of FIDIC forms of contract starts unintentionally so being limited. Any thoughts on the Academy on how that aspect of your market and your audience is going to be addressed?
Thanks for the easy question to start off with. That's great. Yeah, so I didn't elaborate this in the stakeholder survey bit that I talked about, but yeah, in the any other comments question, which I have any standard survey at the end, overridingly, yeah, it was about cost. That was the number one topic that came back to us. So yes, we are aware of it. I don't have a magic answer right now, but I can tell you two things. Is we are looking at the current costing of the modules that we put out for contracts, and listening to the market and having to come down a little bit on the margin there with those. So that's step one for the contracts. Step two, so I talked a little bit about MOOCs. So without going into further detail, the dirty details too much, but if you look at the sort of pricing strategy around that, they are, let's say, for example, a lot of these courses are an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3, maybe 4 hours, and they range between anything from like $30 to $200 in cost. So we're very aware of that, and if we are going to be offering these best business practices, we need to be kind of in line with that and not be without devaluing the brand, and find a happy medium with that. So the best business practice courses, like I think I mentioned, the business model of the contracts and in terms of the costing and the business practices is slightly different. The contract courses are longer in duration. The business practice courses will generally be shorter bite size. So obviously you're not going to have the same price there. Secondly, most of these business practice courses will be offered publicly online, so that obviously reduces the cost with people not having to travel, etc. So if you look at our first offer, and I encourage you, if you have an interest in risk management within the industry, if it's a need that you have, please have a look at that on our website. That's been offered for 120 euros. So that obviously, this will vary from course to course, but it will give you an idea that you know, we're not charging £3 for a 2-hour course on risk management. So it will be more in line with what other people are doing via MOOCs on FutureLearn, Coursera, for example. So long answer, but hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight what we're doing.
Thank you, Michael. And João, would you like to weigh in on this issue?
Yes, please. We face the same problem in Latin America as our colleagues have in Africa or in Asia. That is, as Chris has said, the difference price of a McDonald's hamburger in one country comparing to another. And it applies to salaries in general. When we have, for instance, to join a foreign company, a company from Europe, to do a job in Brazil, one of the difficulties are the different costs we get from Europe, as an example, or from the United States. The tariffs for the guys that join us are very high comparing with the ones we have in our own countries. So I don't know if Michael would be prepared to think a little bit about and to tell us if it would be possible to have some of these courses delivered in the countries by the affiliate associations. If, let's say, FIDIC could, let's say, prepare some monitors, some instructors for the courses, and the courses could be held in Brazil or in other countries if they are presential, so face-to-face. So I don't know if it would be possible, but maybe it would be interesting to think a little bit about.
So yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. So in what I was talking about in the results in the survey, it's really regarding public offers. So things that are, you know, 80% of what we're going to offer is going to be online because of cost as well, and just the ease of use. And I think what you're alluding to is more maybe like private offers in-house. Of course, that they come with, I know from Sylvia's work, that comes with like bespoke pricing. If it's 20 people in a bank that need specific specific training there. But what I was alluding to here are these like mass open courses for everybody via our new platform.
If Amy allows me to say just another word about that, is that another thing is it's not only sometimes the cost, but the language barrier as well. So if you could, let's say, nationalize some of these courses, it would be easier for people to take it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, since I've come on board, I know that as well as English, there's been courses offered in Mandarin, Spanish, I think even Bulgarian as well. So it is something, you know, we don't rule anything out. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael and João. I'm mindful of us not getting bogged down on costs and losing track. I do have two more of our speakers who would like to weigh in on these related issues, and then we'll get back to some of the questions from our audience. If you like to go ahead.
Yes. So I think in line with the answer from Yao, that if possible, that maybe the FIDIC accredited trainers can give the training in-house in their countries because they speak in their language, and also maybe they can reduce the cost. As we know that maybe for risk management, $120 is reasonable for the countries, but maybe the cost for the FIDIC contract is quite significant. And I think the way to speed up and to make enlarge the people to understand the FIDIC foundation of contract management skills, that we encourage the FIDIC accredited trainers. Yeah, we have about almost 70 people. Yeah, and they can speak in their language to give the training, in-house training in their countries. So this is the way that how can we reduce the cost, and they will understand well what is the FIDIC condition of contract. I give the example in Indonesia, we have a problem if they use the English and they don't understand how to use the FIDIC contracts type. So actually the project should be use the FIDIC yellow contract, but they use the APC contract. So this is that we have to be careful, and we have to make sure that the FIDIC accredited trainer can give the right training. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And Tony, I noted that you would like to make a contribution. Please do go ahead.
Yes, just quickly to build on that point. In-house training is obviously more cost effective the closer the trainer is, both in language, location, and price point. So to get to a locally relevant price point, my encouragement is for member associations to identify, encourage local people, local members of theirs to seek and obtain the FIDIC certified training accreditation from FCL. And that will really, I think, enable us to break down this barrier that does, I totally understand, it's impossible to cover it off otherwise. So we must get local trainers. For what it's worth, I think we now have individuals in about 74 countries certified by FIDIC credentialing. Unfortunately, not enough of them are trainers yet, but that's got to be one of our ambitions, is to get FIDIC certified trainers in as many countries as possible, speaking as many of the languages as needed. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, I've just been following some of the contributions, and I think to the earlier point raised by Latoya on innovative thinking, some of our members of the audience have suggested the use of using gold as a standard for payment. That would be back to the future, of course. And of course, there's also the other idea of using digital currency. We're not so sure if that's here to stay either. So much as there may be possibilities of using technology in the form of blockchain for contract administration, I'm not so sure that payment in cryptocurrency will necessarily go down, everywhere else. So, and of course, cost remains a challenge in these environments. There are a couple of questions which are not quite related to the training. And I think that I want to go to Joao, and the one issue that I thought I'd like to pick up from you was, obviously one has to start somewhere, Joao, and you mentioned that in Brazil there isn't a huge amount of knowledge on FIDIC forms of contract, and you have the experience of your company amongst few being able to respond to a bid that required that kind of knowledge. How did you actually achieve that? And what suggestion would you have for those facing similar challenges?
Well, you see, in Brazil, when we have a bid, usually a huge number of companies apply for the bid. And in this case, as I have said before, we believe it is the first FIDIC contract job in Brazil, at least in the public sector. And only 2 companies have applied, only 2 companies. Our company and another one, if I may say, it was Chipsa from Spain. And both companies had to hire people outside. Chipsa was hiring someone from South Africa, and ourselves were hiring people from Poland. So there is a Polish guy at this moment in the interior of Ceará, a state in Brazil, let's say supervising the job because there was no one available in Brazil. You can see what are we talking about. And as I said before, we send 2 engineers, we registered 2 engineers for the FIDIC course on FIDIC contracts, and that is the way in which we managed to win the bid and to start the job just a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Rob. We've got another question. I'm going to turn this one on its head a little bit, and maybe Annie or Tony, whoever may be invited, I think it would be interesting is, so when considering an investment in becoming knowledgeable in FIDIC forms of contract, what exactly, how would one be able to, in the words of the person in the audience, what would make a client and a service provider, professional service provider, contractors, choose to use a FIDIC form of contract over an NEC? What makes the FIDIC form of contract special? And why shouldn't we all be using FIDIC all of the time? Tony, Annie, and that talks to the training investment.
I'll try and answer that. It probably should have Nelson on the line. The reality is that the FIDIC contracts have been in play for 60 plus years. There's a FIDIC set of golden principles on which they're designed and developed, and they enable many, many different things to be undertaken in infrastructure on a very fair basis. They have a long history of what I'll call traditions which enable disputes to be settled in a good way. And there is a very, what I'll say, large pool of expertise, both in the engineering and in the legal professions, that are able to support both customers, clients, contractors, consultants who may wish to use them. There are a huge number of benefits for our industry. And one of them is internationalization of the workforce. The reality is many of the developing economies are producing far less engineers than they need to be. We have an increasing gap in terms of the infrastructure that we require. And we also have a problem with building the resilience we need into infrastructure that we develop. So we've got a number of challenges out there, and it assists both contractors, consultants, and clients tremendously to have a set of international standard contracts where the risk profile, if you like, and the way risks are handled in those contracts are standardized. They're standardized across all the different forms of contract and within the contract. So we're able to deal with lots of local issues, lots of sustainability issues, whether they be special provisions of the UN, like whether it's anti-slavery or whether it's anti-violence against women provisions. We're able to incorporate all of that in our contracts and do so without upsetting the risk profile of the contracts. They're tried and tested, and we can give you about a 2-hour presentation on why you should all be using FIDIC contracts. I'll probably leave it there, but it is an important subject in my mind. It's to the great benefit of efficient delivery of infrastructure around the world. And it's something that we do really need to come up with. NEC, for what it's worth, is not an international standard, and the FIDIC contracts are, and that's a huge difference. The FIDIC contracts are designed to operate under multiple legal systems without changing the contracts. The NEC are not. So I do suggest to you there's a lot of advantages to using FIDIC. I'm very happy if a separate webinar is required to present on that. I'm sure we can arrange it.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And João, comment from you?
Yes, please. I would like to comment on a post from Clarence Elmer Kismundo. He talks about one problem that we face in our design jobs. It is to deal with upfront costs versus life cycle costs. And usually we have been doing that again on cost estimates. And I think from what I have said before, we should include carbon emission. And as Clarence has said, always people are tending to, let's say, invest less in the beginning and having more costs during the life cycle of the infrastructure. And again, I think we should develop some best practice to be able to include also the carbon emission in this sort of dealing between upfront and life cycle costs. Thank you.
Thank you, João. And I think that point that you raised there, there's a key word that's missing in respect of the upfront versus life cycle, and that's a question of ownership. If you own it, you are more likely to take a longer term view. A good golf expression is you play a long game, unlike just simply developing to sell off immediately and recover your costs. So that, of course, is a factor of training on those options, optioneering that I do believe will too be available through the Academy. But I want to touch on another question from our audience. And again, this could be a broader opportunity, Michael, in terms of the training needs. But maybe I'm going to allow any to answer there's a question around a trend amongst clients who likely imagine that they know enough and then start doing, anybody who's a movie fanatic, doing a Frankenstein job on a FIDIC contract and try to make up their own. And the result of that is just a lot of confusion and an inability to resolve disputes. What, other than trying to rap people on the knuckles or get some big voice from above that says, don't do that, how could we, is there a way of addressing this from an education, getting people to understand it better? Any, maybe yourself and then Michael?
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, there's a problem. It's not only in developing countries, but maybe also in developed countries, that the clients is the owner of the project. So they try how to get the benefit for the contract. They mutilated the contract FIDIC condition, and they change some clauses, and in the end became confused. And finally, that's become claim. It's a big claim. So I think I give the example in Indonesia that we give the training to the people, especially to the governments. Of course, we need someone who dedicated to FIDIC to give the free training to the governments, because the governments say always no any budget for the training. But we need the governments to understand well about the FIDIC of contract. So we give the publicity about how the FIDIC condition of contract, how to use the FIDIC condition of contract. And of course, not only the governments, but also the state-owned companies, yeah, and also maybe from the government, that support from the government of Australia. Just recently that the government of Australia give the grant to the certain project, and he is very keen, yeah, to give the training to the government in the region, and also to give the training for their staff to understand well about the FIDIC of contract. So this is the way that we can approach to the from the government, from the Australia or from Britain. So they try to support the government through the funding, grant funding or something like that. So this is that we need someone to approach the government and how to get the grant funding from the other side. So this is the way that we have to educate the governments and also the state-owned enterprises and also other stakeholders to understand well how to use the FIDIC condition of contract. And just to add what Anthony say about the FIDIC and NEC, as my understanding that FIDIC is more appropriate for the civil law, and NEC may appropriate for the common law, as my understanding. Yeah, but I'm not so familiar with the NEC, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And yeah, it looks like we are rapidly running out of time. I think a few quick comments and issues. One of the questions is membership to the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Is that, does FIDIC training give one access to become a member of this institution? That's one of the questions. And then another one is the training open to non-FIDIC members? And maybe a last one. So these are all in the training offering. And Michael, the last one would be a question around the fact that if the FIDIC certified practitioner is a pathway, then is there not merit in FIDIC not partnering with global bodies such as the United Nations to train staff in the same manner as the PMI are doing with Prince 2? Because if that's going to be a requirement, then is there not that opportunity? So I think these are all broad training, and I'm aware that the CIRB question may not quite be within your ambit, Michael. So we'll leave that to someone else to answer. Please do go ahead, and we do have to start wrapping, so I'm going to ask you to be brief. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So the last question was on practitioner's pathway. Could you just elaborate on that slightly? Sorry. So they're asking
if the pathway to FIDIC certified practitioner is you have to be a construction project manager, at least. And the question is, and then I'm reading what's not written here, is that if this is becoming more of a global requirement, then is FIDIC extending its partnership to entities like the United Nations beyond just World Bank and so forth, to offer that kind of training that leads to that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are looking at more partnerships like this with those kind of entities, also with WWF as well, around the sustainability issue and training as well. It's very important that we engage expert partners to help us, as well as I talked about the governance structure at the start. We have these experts on the panel, but that we don't work in, let's say, in isolation with just us and them, but we reach out to people that work in this day to day as well, and that we have a broader input, let's say, from key stakeholders such as United Nations and WWF. Yeah.
Okay. Michael, thank you very much. Colleagues, there are a few other questions, but it does look like a lot of them are comments. We have run out of time. I do think that, and I want to, before we go to wrapping up the session, we certainly will have a review of some of these, and the panel will review, and if there are possibilities of a follow-up and responding to these, certainly we will attempt to do so. And with that, I want to now call on Nelson to help us and bring this all together, or I think Nelson has actually done a good rugby hospital pass to Tony.
Thank you, Chris.
So Tony,
Thank you.
Having put the ball at your feet, please, can you take it home? Thank you.
I'm not sure any Australian can take the ball home and win a rugby match at the moment, but never mind. I think fair to say, well done to you, Chris, on moderating, and Annie, Zhao, and Latoya, Michael for presenting. We are extremely committed to capacity building and training, and simply to be in the business of building the best workforce that our industry needs to deliver the infrastructure for our communities. It's a very real need, and it's one that we will continue to address through the Academy and through, obviously, FIDIC credentialing. But we do need to make sure the infrastructure we are developing is developed in a way where integrity is preserved, which is sustainable, where we've got the right quality and resilience, and these projects are free of bribery and corruption. It's a massive task, and FIDIC is only really a small organisation, but through our nearly 100 member associations and the 40-odd thousand firms we represent, we have this opportunity, and that's what we're trying to take. The FIDIC contracts, as already evidenced in the questions, are a key strategy that we use to make sure that we can deliver that infrastructure in an appropriate way. The contracts themselves provide, as I've already mentioned, they are the international standard, the gold standard, and we do have golden principles by which we control, if you like, the standard, which is the FIDIC standard. There are many situations, there are many facilities within the contracts which enable things such as I've already mentioned, in sustainability, whether it's carbon clauses, where it's the anti-slavery, anti-bribery and corruption clause. You can build into the special provisions all sorts of things that you might like. And in fact, you can turn them into your national standard contract by developing a national standard set of special provisions. So all of these things are eminently possible and doable. The cost of training, if one thinks about developing that capable workforce, is very small money when it is put up against the level of investment that is being made in infrastructure around the world. And training for a better workforce will undoubtedly save many, many millions of dollars, whatever currency you're working in terms of getting things done more efficiently, avoiding disputes, and managing contracts effectively. There's no doubt there are other forms of contract out there. There's no doubt that NEC that was mentioned earlier is very, very useful in sophisticated project circumstances, but it's not for everybody. And the FIDIC contract has had 60 years of experience and application worldwide, and is used, as Nelson will tell you, by most of the multilateral banks, and we have developed a strong relationship to them. No doubt a number of your questions will give rise to thoughts of future webinars about these topics, and hopefully we can answer some of those. But for tonight, I'm extremely grateful to the team for what they've delivered. We have our major International Contract Users Conference coming up in November on the 29th and 30th in London. We then have two further webinars in this series. One, which is the International Financial Institutions Committee webinar on mitigating the impacts of working in disaster and conflict zones. And then on the 9th of December, working together to combat corruption in the global construction industry. So these are all vital opportunities for you, and I hope you'll get a chance to take them. If you have any further questions or anything else you'd like to comment to us on, please feel free to contact us at FIDIC headquarters. But thank you very much for tonight, and I hope you've all enjoyed our webinar. Thank you.